Hey, I'm Jim Barry, and this is Miami Life, the show that zeroes in on life here in South Florida. The people, the stories, the trends that make life what it is here in the sunshine. Well, it's no secret that we have a huge service economy here in South Florida, which brings us to what has become for some a pretty sore subject: tipping. Whether you go to a restaurant, bar, fast food spot, coffee shop, whether you catch an Uber or have your meal delivered, everybody, it seems, wants a tip. Folks have become so weary of it, they have coined a new phrase for it: tipflation. According to a recent poll, 72% of Americans say they are expected to tip more now than 5 years ago. How do folks living here feel about this? Well, depends who you ask.
I only tip if I'm eating at a restaurant.
I always tip, yeah.
Depends of the service.
Well, I base that percentage off the service that I get.
In fact, the mood around tipping has taken a negative turn. Another survey finds nearly 60% of Americans now view tipping in a negative light, and 35%, look at that, say it's just out of control. That's why we thought it would be a perfect topic to wrestle with in our latest 20, 40, 60, in which 3 generations wrestle with one topic. And we have 3 highly opinionated guests joining us today for this topic. Repping the 20-somethings is Ryan Gleischer, digital producer here at CBS News Miami. Ryan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jim.
Also, Michael Altman, owner and executive chef of the new Kitchen 57 restaurant in South Miami. He knows the restaurant biz inside and out. And speaking his mind for the 60-somethings, veteran business executive Bill Diggs. He's now executive director of the Miami-Dade Economic Advocacy Trust. All right, Bill, let me start with you. It seems to me that now, since the pandemic, tipping has really zoomed, and it seems to be a thing that we've really had to adjust to. Am I right or wrong?
No, you're right. I mean, it's almost like we're paying the salary of some of the employees. It's high. It's a lot.
Too much, you think?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it is too much. I mean, because sometimes there's service tip. I mean, there's a tip, there's service charge. You're tipping for takeout food. I mean, it's just all too much. It's confusing.
Ryan, you're representing the 20-somethings, and a lot of the folks who are getting the tips are younger people like yourself. Yeah. Are we not sensitive enough to the fact that you guys have to be on the grind and try to make it as much as you can?
Well, look, we're trying to make the grind and do all this stuff in the community and at a restaurant or whatever. But there's a point where it's too much. Like when you see the Square app, it's like, oh, I'm gonna be asked if I want a tip. And if it's a place like a cafe or something, maybe if it's for a barista, but if it's just for a person taking your order and grabbing something, that's too much. I mean, I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. Yeah. But I mean, for a young worker, I think you should tip in the right situation.
Yeah. I guess a lot of people I talk to, Michael, say, you know what, if the restaurants just paid more, we wouldn't have this issue. Is it that simple or not?
It's not that simple.
Why not?
Well, if we have, as restaurateurs, we have expenses, we have sales that we need to combat with, and to be able to operate and live our own living, we need to be able to pay people to produce food at certain rates, and dishwashers and upper management as well. And I think over time it's just something that's been done that we follow with. We still do have to pay those employees at what's called a tip rate, and then the rest of their livelihood is made up in tips. And it's not tips are not mandatory, right? If you think about it, and
I don't know, because some restaurants I go to, like Bill said, I see the service charges automatic, like I have no choice. And I think to someone who's old school, you're thinking, well, look, I'll pay for the service. I'll give you a great tip if the service is terrific. But if it's not, why am I still being hit with the tip? Bill, am I right or wrong there?
No, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's like for me and my wife, listen, it's date night. I don't want to go and have to fight with the waiter about a tip. So when they say, well, it's not mandatory, but now all of a sudden I got to go out and be a jerk and say, hey, can we talk about this? like I'm giving her performance appraisal, right? I mean, and it just becomes hard because I just want to go and eat, pay a reasonable rate for the food, and chances are, like I was saying earlier, I've gone here before, right? So it comes down to the waitress or the waiter, and I just want to make sure that I'm tipping commensurate with the service. I just don't want to feel like I've got service charge, and then you get the explanation about, well, everyone shares in this. I only get the tip.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, okay, so do I need a Ouija board to figure this out?
Ryan, what about that? I guess a lot of people like Bill think they're used to tipping the waiter, but not the folks in the back who you don't see.
Well, I mean, in a way, having that automatic gratuity charge like you're referring to before, that could be good to tipping the people in the back. But also a key part to keep in mind is not a lot of people have cash to just give to,
That's fair.
the waiter or whatever, because at this point, people are moving more to credit cards and stuff. So at this point, I'd say people in the back, they deserve as much of a tip, I'd say, as their waiter or whatever, because they're probably being paid similar wages. But there's a certain extent beyond that where it is a little too much. Like if there's like someone in a higher position, like let's say a chef, I don't know if he deserves one compared to like maybe a busser or someone like that.
Want to weigh in on that, Michael?
Yeah, I think it ends up being part of the individual restaurateur or business owners, how they want to pay their staff or tip out their staff.
Yeah.
Many that I know and have spoken with, back of the house, the kitchen, the dishwashers do not get tips. There are many that do as well. So they're paid a much higher hourly rate. And as minimum wage increases up to 2026, this is going to become a much more prevalent conversation, and this show could go on forever, potentially.
Yeah, but you've heard this frustration, I'm sure, and I know some restaurants have moved to say, you know what, no tips whatsoever. You come in here, you just eat, and that's it. If you want to give a tip, great. But I think some restaurateurs are sensitive to the fact that people are feeling it's just too much.
Yeah, I don't know. I think tip reflects service. So at my restaurant, we give the best service that we can, because that is what I want to give my guests, the best experience possible. Yeah. And then it's up to the guest to leave a tip. So if there's bad service, the server's going to get bad tips. If there's good service, they're going to get a good tip. But that's kind of that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And through training, it's not an ongoing issue for us.
Yeah.
But
Ryan, you talked about the fact of that screen, and I have felt this. Yeah. Like I order some takeout food, and so I'll go to the restaurant and I'll whip up my credit card and say, okay, Jim, there's the bill. Then I look at the screen and it's giving me all these options, and then the person there is looking at me, looking at the screen, and I'm feeling guilty because if I don't give them a tip, I feel like the jerk. But if I do give them a tip, I feel bad, Bill.
Well, listen, that's exactly what I'm talking about, And again, I don't feel as bad when it's takeout, to be quite honest with you, because when look, if it's takeout, I got a rule. I'm not tipping you.
Really?
Right? I mean, unless you want me to go in the back and grab my own food and put it together, I'm just not tipping you takeout. I think that's disingenuous. Yeah. And the person that owns the place, that's their issue, right? I just won't do it, and so for me, that's the drawing line, right? But I'll tell you this. I have learned, and as I watch my habits, I don't go back to a restaurant that has a service charge and ask me for a tip anymore. I just don't go there. Yeah, because I don't want to ruin my night. Right, I've had a great night. I will go to a place, because the silent killer in the restaurant business, from what I understand, is when you don't come back anymore. Yep. So my idea is that I'm a habitual person. I go to the same places many times.
Sure, if they treat you well, then you'll go back and over and over.
Exactly.
So what about being sensitive to that point, Michael, where people, may not say it out loud, but they just will like, you know what, I'm not going back there anymore because of the policy.
Yeah. You never find out about it because they don't come back and they don't say it. Most people just don't come back, and then you look at your analytics, you look at your numbers, you see things are dropping. Why is this week different than this week? And we don't happen to do service charge. I personally don't believe in service charge, right? Because if we're doing our job, which is giving good service, then there should not be an issue.
All right. So Ryan, what's how do we get out of this tipping point, if you will? What's the answer?
Well, basically the key solution to this is just get rid of the feature in Square where you flip over the screen and you say how much do you want to tip, because if someone wants a tip, they could tip. They could leave cash if they wanted to. I mean, I'm sure there's a way to do it, but a little less invasively. I
Gotcha.
mean, so if there's a way to do that, I mean, that's probably.
Don't make me feel guilty.
Yeah, you don't want to feel like the Grinch, but you also don't want to like be forced into something.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Guys, I appreciate your perspective on this. I'm sure a lot of people here in South Florida can relate because it's something that is confronted by everybody. Thank you so much to talk about that issue of tipping. We'll be right back with more in a minute. And up next on Miami Life, meet the local mom who is embracing artificial intelligence and everything it can do. Now she's teaching other parents to stop fearing AI and instead learn to use it to help their kids. And we talked to award-winning crime novelist Alex Segura about his new book and why Miami plays such an important part in his storytelling. Welcome back. Artificial intelligence is becoming a bigger part of society by the day. We've been telling you about it now for some time, of course. Our very first show, in fact, featured a look at how pervasive AI has become. Well, a lot of people are scared of the technology, and specifically, they worry about the impact it will have on children. But not everybody is running from AI. CBS News Miami's Terry Hornstein sat down with a Miami mom who is embracing the technology and also teaching others about it.
Wonderful. Lulu the painter. What a creative soul.
Tamara Walsh, a mother of 3, spends a lot of time with her children and a lot of time learning and using artificial intelligence.
I can create an extremely realistic AI avatar that can talk and can join Zoom meetings for me and looks and sounds just like me.
She says she went to a seminar just last year and was blown away by the technology. But at her children's school, she realized there was a big disconnect, so she decided to change that.
It was incredible because you see these parents come in and they're nervous and they're not even sure really why they're there, and then they left feeling so empowered.
Tamara started hosting seminars, teaching parents how to use AI in a positive way.
I use it all the time. I'll look up milestones, like what, for my youngest at 2, I'm like, what should he be doing now?
Of course, she says it's important to keep an eye on kids and know what they're doing online. But she says when used properly, AI truly is a game changer.
Our middle child, who's 6, she was really struggling to read. And over the summer, she started using adaptive learning platforms with generative AI. Mind's blowing.
And the kids have noticed big changes in their own skills.
You tap on this app, and then you have to read it, and then it reads it over for you.
From learning to cooking to everyday activities, Tamara says she is happy to pass along the knowledge.
You take a picture of your fridge and say, come up with a kid-friendly recipe with just the ingredients I have right now in my fridge. You can snap a picture of their like artwork that they drew and then ask it, create a bedtime story.
When it comes to cheating, Tamara says AI isn't the problem.
Everybody's worried about that, and we should, but it's sort of like missing the forest for the trees. I think that we're putting kids in a box when we're like, they're only going to use this to cheat.
The children still spend plenty of time outdoors being kids, but also have new and interesting ways of learning and having fun.
You can choose a topic according to your age, and it will debate with you.
Really?
Mm.
So what did you debate?
Should homework be against the law or not?
Terry Hornstein, CBS News, Miami.
I guess it depends how much homework you have. All right, still to come, best-selling writer Alex Segura talks about his new mystery novel and how growing up in Miami was the perfect training ground for writing crime fiction. Well, best-selling author Alex Segura, born and raised right here in Miami, returned home to promote his latest novel, Alter Ego. It's a labor of love that combines 2 of his passions, crime and comics. We talked with him to discuss the book and why Miami is such a great supporting character in crime stories. Alex Segura is this week's Person of Interest. It was a homecoming for best-selling author Alex Segura as he returned to Books and Books in Coral Gables to promote his new book, Alter Ego.
Thanks for reading this.
The murder mystery is a sequel to Segura's award-winning novel, Secret Identity. The main character in Alter Ego is a Cuban-American filmmaker named Annie, who gets the chance to make a comic based on her favorite childhood superhero, the legendary Lynx.
The core of Annie's story is, what is she willing to do to make sure that her story comes to life? And when she realizes, obviously it's wrapped in a bow of a murder mystery, so you've got those elements of like a thriller, but the big question is art versus commerce. Like, what am I willing to give up so I can have this come to life?
Born and raised in Miami, Segura went to Southwest High School. He also worked for the Miami Herald, where he got a first-hand glimpse of the type of crime that only happens in the 305.
Yeah, I think just Miami has that special recipe for stories, crime stories that go get a little weird, but also reading reporters like Edna Buchanan, like the Herald has such a great legacy of crime reporters and crime coverage. So being like kind of at the desk and seeing that stuff come in was really inspirational.
And you cannot beat Miami as a backdrop. The city has been its own character in Segura's work. His acclaimed Pete Fernandez novels, centered on a deeply flawed PI, were set here in South Florida.
And in Alter Ego, I needed a private eye. And so I used Pete, and my editor was like, you should use him some more. Like, it's cool that he's here. And so writing him again opened up a door that I think I wouldn't be opposed to writing him, as a novel again. Miami's paradise in many ways, but there's always the undercurrent of crime and, society, social change. And I think that duality, like this beautiful place with a dark undercurrent, is what informs a lot of my work, especially the crime stories, because you can live in paradise and you can still grapple with more dangerous elements.
Crime fiction authors like James Ellroy and Michael Connelly made a big impact on Segura and taught him that the character always comes first.
You have to have a compelling character. I mean, you can have the greatest, twistiest plot, but if the reader doesn't care about who they're reading, they're going to check out. And I think what makes Alter Ego interesting is that you have Annie. She's a single mom. She's a recovering alcoholic. She is a filmmaker. So you're bringing readers into a world they might not know intimately. Like the world of comics and film and media is, it's standard for a lot of people working in those industries, but to a regular reader, they don't know the nuance of like creating a comic book character or like what happens when it's optioned for film.
Segura is also a prolific comics writer. He's written stories featuring rock icons Kiss and the Ramones, along with superhero comics for DC and Marvel and Star Wars novels. But even when he's working in a galaxy far, far away, he still misses some of the comforts of home.
The weather. One of the hardest things for me adapting to New York was having basically a wardrobe for every season. And in Miami, just you have your clothes and the weather, the food. I miss the Cuban food. El Palacio de los Jugos I really like, and Versailles. I miss the community. I miss I think there's just a vibe that doesn't exist anywhere else.
Thank you, Alex, and good luck with the book. We'll be right back. Well, next week on Miami Life, for people who have lost someone dear to them, the holiday season can be bittersweet. For my former CBS Miami colleague Cynthia Demas, this will be the first Christmas without her beloved father. Angelo Demas died in November after a remarkable life. He lived to be 100. I talked to Cynthia about how her family is handling the holidays without its patriarch.
My coping has just been watching my mom and making sure she's okay. And talking to my kids and making sure they're okay. And I guess I cope by making sure everyone else is okay. And then, I've had moments, of course, and especially by myself.
You can catch that story next week on Miami Life. Time now to hear from you, the Miami Life audience, and a few of you weighed in on the story on the Christmas Creep, where the holidays get started sooner and sooner. Well, Sonny doesn't mind it. In fact, he says, I used to put up my Christmas decorations right after Thanksgiving, but this year I began putting them up after September. After September? Wow. And another viewer simply let the emojis speak for him. So keep sending us your comments and feedback on our stories to cbsmiami@cbs.com. That does it for this week's episode of Miami Life. Remember, you can catch us every Thursday. New episodes for Miami Life drop at 6:30 on the stream. You can also watch Miami Life on demand on our YouTube channel. I'm Jim Barry. Thanks for watching.